Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm going to call to order this regular board meeting of the Perrysburg Board of Education this Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. Mr. Drewer, if I could have roll call, please.
Ms. Larimer.
Here.
Mrs. Eubank.
Here.
Dr. Ruffert.
Here.
Mr. Pullman.
Here.
Mr. Bennington.
Here. Asking everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, again, good evening, everybody. We're going to start the meeting with our safety briefing. Perrysburg Schools welcomes you to the Commodore Building, and we thank you for attending tonight's Board of Education meeting. We care about the safety of our students, staff, families, and guests. Please note that there are exits on both the east and west sides of the cafeteria. In case of an emergency, an AED is located just outside the cafeteria doors. You are located at 140 East Indiana Avenue. Thank you for joining us tonight and supporting Perrysburg Schools. Next, I'd like a motion. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the proposed agenda.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Larimer and Dr. Ruffert. And roll call, please.
Ms. Larimer.
Yes.
Dr. Ruffert.
Yes.
Mr. Pullman.
Yes.
Mrs. Eubank.
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes. The motion carries. Next item, Board of Education recognitions tonight. The board may notice or be aware that Mr. Hostler is not here tonight. We have Mrs. Price to pinch hit and run it for us. So
Thank you, Mr.
turn the
Bennington.
recognitions over to you.
So very pleased to recognize the work of the Business Advisory Council tonight. So I'm going to be calling up Susan Rowland Miller, who's been the Business Advisory Council Chair. And she's really been instrumental in pulling together a really passionate group of individuals who have been working really closely with the district over the past several years to really provide new opportunities in career exploration and really preparing kids for future careers. So I know we've been talking with Mr. Bennington over the weekend and worked to put together a summary of the work that's been done in the joint statement. And so Susan, I'll let you kind of speak to the work of the Business Advisory Council, and then I know we do have a couple members here that we'd like to recognize tonight as well.
And I'll speak slowly because I think a couple are still on their way. No, I won't. But I want to thank you, Mr. Bennington, and the rest of the board for the chance to recognize the members and their volunteer work on behalf of the district, as well as to perhaps share with you and the community a little bit about what we've been doing over the last year. If you weren't aware of how we kind of function, we meet 4 times a year, and our goal is to provide insight and up-to-date information about career pathways, about the technical and professional skills in demand and necessary for jobs in the 21st century, and to share best practices from the broad variety of businesses represented on the council. This year has been a particularly fulfilling one to be on the Business Advisory Council. When we first met in April of 2018, almost 5 years ago, we were just then beginning to learn about what the district was doing, what it wasn't doing about career exploration. And about 2 years into our work, we had just started to get a vision where we were creating a plan, and then 2020 happened. Since we are advisors and not staff members, we're not supposed to do stuff. We're not supposed to get in the business if we're not asked to. Any implementation of our great ideas is really requiring staff time, and we know that staff time is always at a premium, and in 2020 and 2021, it was pretty much free time to do more work was not existing. Last year, you added, though, a staff position, a very key staff position in the Coordinator for Careers and Community Service Liaison. This role was fulfilled by Christine Albright, and her responsibilities overlap our work a great deal, and in the very best way. In addition to Christine, Justin Foltz, the Director of Student Services and Wellbeing, has also become engaged in our conversations, as both of them look to how the district is comprehensively engaging students in career exploration. With the addition of Christine and Justin to our conversations, what we have discussed and planned over the last 5 years is now finally being put into action. Students are being encouraged to learn and explore in more ways about the vast number of career pathways and to utilize the identified aptitudes and interests in the U Science assessment to set potential vocational directions. And more real-life workers in these in-demand careers are being invited to come into the schools and are being asked to host groups of schools on site for career exploration. It has been an exciting year to be a part of the council and to see our work gain traction and to be able to move forward in our conversation and our plans. And so I want to thank Christine and Justin, as well as Mr. Hostler in absentia, Mr. Drewer and Mrs. Price for their work and support that is making being a part of the Business Advisory Council such a worthwhile volunteer opportunity. Because of their work, the business community is being heard and students are benefiting. The council continues to lift up all the career pathways available for students and graduates of Perrysburg schools, from those requiring four-year university degrees and beyond, to those pathways available to students while they are still even in school and immediately after graduation. We also continue to lift up the crucial professional skills that younger employees are sometimes challenged to bring to the workplace, including written and spoken communication skills, experience in the computer programs utilized in most businesses, and an ability to receive and apply critical feedback regarding their work. The council is a wonderful group of 15 community members who represent a variety of businesses and a wide variety of job titles. I want to thank them for their dedication to attend our 7:30 a.m. meetings, for the level of engagement and understanding that they bring to every discussion, and to their commitment in preparing today's students for their futures. I am not a morning person, but I always look forward to gathering and dialoguing with the council members as long as I've had my coffee. As I share each of their names and positions and businesses, I'll ask those who are actually here to stand and join me up front. But I just to hear the wide range of people, their names are listed, but to give you some of their backgrounds. Kelly Alter is an architect and the healthcare and wellness design leader at the Collaborative. I believe she's also a PHS grad. Ashley Ballister is the owner of Local Roots Juice Company just across the street on Elm, and I believe also a grad. Aaron Bly is the Chief Information Officer at First Solar. Chris Campbell is the principal of Campbell Mechanical Services, up off 75 in Northwood. You can see it from the highway. Josh Conley is coaching basketball right now, but in his day job, he's the technology advancement leader for Owens, Illinois. Lisa Hawker is president of employee benefits operations at Highland, right downtown. Becky Caulfield is here with us today, and she is at Spartan Chemical in Maumee and is the manager for governmental affairs and sustainability and is a chemist by training. Tom Mackin is the mayor of the city, but he is also the LMH, the Lucas Metropolitan Housing Chief Administrative and Legal Officer. He wears both hats on our council. Ed Nagel is the president and CEO of Nagel Companies, which is their area is logistics, freight transportation, and warehousing. Fadi Nahas is a member, partner, executive committee chair at Eastman and Smith, attorneys downtown. Erica Parrish has been a part of Owens Community College, and that's how she first came to the council. She is now the Deputy Commissioner of Diversity and Development for the Indiana Department of Corrections. Andrew Stocking, also a PHS grad, is president and CEO of Principal Business Enterprises just south on 75 in Bowling Green. Lauren Vargas, one of the newer members, is from ProMedica, and she is responsible, she's manager of education initiatives at ProMedica, and it's creating such a great partnership right now for the students to be able to explore careers in healthcare and actually get certifications while they're still in school. And Jeremy Zeisloft is here. He is Senior Vice President for Commercial Lending at Waterford Bank. That is the council. I want to thank each member. I want to thank the board for your continued support and especially the staff who are doing the real work. So thank you.
So yes, thank you, Susan, and thank you to all of the Business Advisory Council members and certainly to the board for their support of this work. We have a small token of appreciation and we'll do a picture.
Close up. We'll Photoshop everybody in.
Wear the flag. We like the flag.
Thank you for
Yeah, and that is great work that that committee does, kind of setting a North Star for all the work that the district does is another connection into why we do what we do as a district. So again, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for attending tonight. Okay.
So next on the agenda, we are recognizing our American Legion Americanism and Government Test State winner, Daniel Kavanaugh, and we have Mr. DiGregorio coming up to introduce him, so you can come on up and tell us about this wonderful accomplishment for the student.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ron DiGregorio, and I serve as an American government educator at Perrysburg High School. First, I want to extend my gratitude to the board for allowing me a few moments this evening to recognize a group of students who have shown excellence and competency in the areas of American government, American citizenship, and history. Last year, we began a new tradition at PHS of offering a sitting of the Americanism and Government test, which is sponsored by the American Legion. The objective of the Americanism and Government test is twofold. First, it's to encourage a healthy, active, participatory knowledge of our government, history, and civic engagement. Secondly, the goal of the test is to inspire students to learn more about the government, the United States, and to appreciate the freedoms enjoyed by our nation's citizens. I do want to tell you a little bit about the test so you can see how impressive the accolade that Daniel has received is. So on average, excuse me, over 65,000 students participate in this test program annually. The initial field of 65,000 students is narrowed to 84 district winners through several judging levels in the state of Ohio. Winning test papers are then submitted to a state judging committee for this program. From the field of 84 district winners, the state judging committee selects 18, so 18 out of 65,000. The state award from the Ohio American Legion for the 18 state winners is a 5-day, all-expense-paid trip to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C., under the direction of the Department of Americanism Director, accompanied by representatives of the Ohio American Legion and the Ohio American Legion Auxiliary. Over the last 2 years since we began this program, more than 150 students have taken the time on a Friday afternoon in the fall to sit for this exam. I'd like to thank the board and Mr. Cookson for supporting this initiative, and especially the students who gave up a football Friday to take this test. The Americanism and Government test is a 50-question exam consisting of true and false, multiple choice, and fill-in-the-blank type questions, and a 300-word essay is also part of the exam. Every student takes the same test and writes the same essay prompt. So tonight, I'd like to acknowledge the top scoring students in the boy and girl category from grades 10 through 12. Freshmen may take the test, but their scores are not counted. It's just for practice. And most of the winners are not present this evening, but I want to acknowledge their achievement at this time anyway. So for 10th grade, the top score students were Ronald Hershey and Julia Wendler. In 11th grade, Daniel Kavanaugh and Carly Courtney. And in 12th grade, Andrew Chung and Catherine Magoon. At this time, I would like to take the opportunity to call special attention and to introduce Daniel Kavanaugh. Daniel, if you would please join me. Daniel was our highest scoring student this year at Perrysburg, earning an impressive 48 out of 50. His test proceeded throughout the competition, and it's my pleasure to announce that Daniel was selected as one of the state winners and will represent Perrysburg High School on a trip to Gettysburg and Washington, D.C., where he will not only visit the White House, but also lay a wreath at Arlington National Cemetery. We are incredibly proud of Daniel and all of our students for sitting for this test, so please join me in recognizing Daniel and all of our students who sat for this test. I'd also like to call to the podium Mr. Joe Howell. He represents the American Legion this evening, and he would also like to give a few remarks for Daniel and the rest of the test takers.
Thank you, Ron. My name is Joe Howell. I'm the Vice Commander for American Legion Post 28 here in Perrysburg, Ohio. Daniel obviously really did great on the test. I helped Mr. DiGregorio administer the test for him. I didn't have to use really any red ink on him, so I was quite surprised that I was like, man, this guy's got a really awesome score. And I figured he would do very, very well at the state level, if not win, and of course he did win. So on behalf of Post 28, I would like to give you a check for $100 for your great effort on the test. Thank you very much.
Awesome, though. Yeah. Gets to go to Gettysburg. That's cool. I couldn't do well on that test at all.
Mr. Howell, you have another gentleman from the American Legion joining you tonight. Would you like to?
Mr. Stock.
Awesome.
Mine too.
Mom wants a picture. Awesome.
That was a good picture.
Yeah.
Daniel, congratulations again on behalf of the board. Outstanding achievement. And to our fellow members from the American Legion, thank you for coming out. It's always nice to see you guys at the board meeting. So,
Yes, thank
again,
you.
It is now time for the 5-minute break, which I'm going to assume we're okay to keep moving. We'll take a quick minute here to pull up signatures for public participation while those are coming up. So this is our first opportunity for public participation. This session will be limited, according to board policy, to 15 minutes. Speakers will be given 3 minutes to speak on agenda item topics only. And looks like we have one speaker for later on in the board meeting. So, okay.
So we're going to move on to the superintendent's report, and we're going to start with our counselors, and we have some of our wonderful counselors here. We have Andrea Monheim from the junior high, Nikki Ohms from Woodland, and Nicole Ben from the high school, and they are going to present on who you are and what do you do.
Hi. Thanks for having us tonight.
Welcome.
So I'm Nikki Ohms at Woodland.
Andrea Monheim at the junior high.
Hi, I'm Nicole Ben from the high school.
Our elementary counseling team, we have 4 of us. Molly Davis is at Fort Meigs. Jason Koval is at Toth Elementary. Alyssa Newmeyer is at Frank, and then I'm at Woodland Elementary. And then at HPI, Hall Prairie, we have Brandy Copa and Nicole Wagner as the counselors there.
And then we have myself, Andrea Monheim, and then my partner, Tom Przbilski, and the favorite staff member now is Saltz.
Okay, at the high school, we have me, Nicole Ben. We have our new counselor, Brooke Potts, Rick Reddick, Danielle Sidebottom, and Elena Sig.
All right, I'm just going to go over some overview of responsibilities. Keep in mind, this is not all-inclusive. It would be like describing what is your role of a parent. So this is just a snapshot of a few of the things, and I'm not going to read them all, but I want you to at least be able to look at them and see if department-wide we do some things that are similar throughout the buildings. You'll see that things on there are called Tier 1. Tier 1 are things that we do that are helpful for all students. For example, classroom lessons that we do, the link and the web programs. Group counseling then is Tier 2, which is a smaller group that we help out. And then the Tier 3 things are things such as smaller individual career counseling, individual counseling, crisis counseling, some safety plans that we put in there. We also do consultation and collaborations with many families. We have teaming meetings, parent meetings. We're also involved in the Jacket Way initiative, the BLT, which is our building level committee, and we're members of the crisis team, and we are involved in our teaming from grades 5 through 12. That's just an overview of some department things that we do that are similar at all buildings.
And then in addition, at the elementary, each building runs an annual New Kids on the Block program every August where we train buddies, and then we have new kids who come and they meet their buddies, and we do a program every year, and then we follow up with new student lunch groups each week to make sure the kids are transitioning well. And then at the elementary, we are also testing coordinators, so we have our hands in gifted and state testing. Oh, and then at Hall Prairie, we don't have someone from Hall Prairie there, so I'm speaking on their behalf. They also do new student lunches to support the kids who are new there. And they also teach ACT, which is a suicide prevention curriculum. It is part of the Red Flag curriculum.
And then again at the junior high, which actually happened today, I taught in the health classes, we continue that Red Flag program, which is a suicide prevention program. So it comes right from the HPI, but we go into more detail. We also do new student lunches, of course, and that's fun. And we do then weekly meetings for the first month of school. So we have lunches with them to make sure that they're doing well. And we also have, as far as career, we do the Penter field trip, but Tom and I did meet with Christine Albright, so we've got some more things, so we're excited to have that new initiative too. So we have some new things planned in the spring for our 7th graders, and hopefully next year then we'll move into the 8th graders.
Okay, well, at the high school, we do some things that are a little different than the elementary, HPI, and the junior high school. One of the things that we just basically completed today was the registration and scheduling of nearly 1,800 students. So I definitely wore my tennis shoes, and I wore a different set of clothes to come here tonight. We do follow students and help students through the College Credit Plus process. We do academic, career, and post-secondary planning with our students. We do collaborate with our career liaison that Susan was alluding to earlier. We do newcomer orientation, rocks, and lunch and learns as well. Okay, Scuda is challenges first. Oh. Okay, so I guess we're moving into challenges. All right, so that is me. Okay, so as we look at the challenges that the school counseling department has, first of all, I want to start off by saying that we really are truly very grateful for the resources that we do have available to us. We do work in a great school district. Speaking personally, I've worked in other places and in other states, and we do by far have the most talented counseling staff I have ever worked with, and so thank you very much for that. One of the things that I've studied in depth, not only in graduate school but in practice, is the American School Counselor Association national model. And in the national model, the model states that we should have a counselor to student ratio of 1 counselor for every 250 students. And I won't read the counselor to student ratios that you see there, but they are listed there. In Perrysburg, we do not have a counselor to student ratio of 1 to 250, but to just state it overall, in Perrysburg, we averaged it out. Our counselor to student ratio is 1 to 447 students. And so as we look at that, I like to use the comparison as if you were to go into a classroom setting. And as a former teacher, I can say that if I had a classroom of 25 students, you know, that you can do a lot as a teacher with 25 students. You can be very, very effective and far more effective than you could in a classroom with 47 students. So that is the reason for the recommendation of one counselor to 250 students. For more information about the Ask a National model and the best practices, there is a link at the bottom there. It's called the Ask a National Model Executive Summary. Not only does it describe the ratio, but it also describes what the national model says about best practices for school counselors.
And with the growing caseloads, there are growing needs, and we definitely are seeing an increase in mental health crises, for example, suicide ideation at all levels, threat assessments, and crisis intervention, to name a few. And on top of that, there's a limited capacity for outside counseling support and crisis support, so we do the best we can with the needs and the number of kids that we are serving. And there is also a complex and constantly changing graduation requirements from ODE. So.
All right, this is also from the ASCOS, the national model. They do recommend that we do document all of our time, and this is just 2 areas. Our pie is, we get a pie chart, we put in and document all of the students that we see, all of our meetings, all of our phone calls, everything is documented in this program called SCUDA. And so it's very comprehensive. The 2 areas that are probably most common for all of you to know what that means is direct student counseling is obviously one of our larger areas. That's the individual counseling. That's our small groups that we run, student support teams. Those are, and then some instructions when we go in the classroom. Then indirect is when we work with people from outside of the school, the outside therapists, parents coming in, other resources. So those are our 2 largest pie, but we could, someday tell you a little bit more. There's lots more that encompasses in our SCUDA data, but just something new that we've been doing for the last 3 years to let you know that this is all documented.
All right, so moving into accomplishments, and one of my very favorite topics, which is the Freshman Success Initiative that we've put into place. In the summer of 2021, Dr. Short was retiring and approved for us to go through training with the University of Chicago and the National Freshman Success Institute. And Aaron Cookson, who was coming in, and poor guy, he came in, and there we are in training, and he's like, "What's this?" So we went through 7 days of training, and it was all, the Institute work was based on a 25-year study of what makes a successful high school student, and it was based on work in the Chicago Public Schools. So we took the research, we took the practices, and we put some of those elements into place this school year. And our initial results are amazing. Due to the supports that we have put into place, which include freshman study halls that have an English, math, science, and social studies right there in that study hall where students can go get help as needed, including we have multi-tiered systems of support teams, problem-solving teams that help look at our students and their performance and put interventions into place. We are looking at the data. And the data is showing us that in comparison to last year, our failures of our freshmen are down 1/3. Wow. That is 1/3 over last year. And that is before we begin now this semester our process of credit recovery. Because of the work that we're doing with this, we have been invited to attend and present at the American School Counselor Association National Convention in Atlanta and at the Ohio Association of College Advising Counselors State Conference in Toledo about the work that we are doing. But we're not done. We have more to do, and I have more that I need to talk Mr. Cookson into, so stay tuned.
Nicole, I had a question. Oh, it's sure. When you say failures, what does that encompass?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
Failures, what does that encompass? Like, is that an F?
An F.
Okay, a D or just an F?
Not Ds, Fs.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
And when we say F, what the research is showing, and has shown for the last 25 years in the research study, is that if a student fails more than one semester of a core class in their freshman year, they are 4 times less likely to graduate from high school. If they, and that is a significant number. And so when we looked at these numbers and decided, are we going to move forward with this? You know, we were looking at our failure rate last year. We had an on-track rate, meaning we had 87% of our freshmen at this point in the school year last year that were on track to graduate, meaning they had not failed any core classes. It was 87%. But our graduation rate is far higher than that. And so we needed to move, and we needed to make some moves, and we did that. And so we've made some significant strides over last year.
Great. And then one other question. When you say those, are you just talking about the core, the 4 core that you are following?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Good question. Yeah, keep me talking. Really, just.
A few more accomplishments. We have held numerous career day events over the years at all of our buildings. We also use panorama data, which is a screener to identify priority needs in our students. We look at that data, we use that data, we come up with a plan to meet the needs of those kids. At the junior high, 57% of students who participated in the counseling Tier 2 focus groups, out of those 57 students, 96% showed mastery of their skills. And then jumping down a couple at the elementary, teacher surveys showed an increase in proficiency and application of skills for the majority of students who participated in Tier 2 focus groups at the elementary. Jacket Club is an after-school homework help program at the junior high. SCUDA, we have 2 Perrysburg counselors who are ambassadors. It's a volunteer role, just so they can work and help improve the system that we use every day to track how we use our time. And then also, we love supervising interns, so we are helping lead the next generation of school counselors every year. We take them, we love having them, and yeah, so. And then, I think we're on our last slide. Did you know that in the past 2 years, our district has added an assistant director of student services and well-being, Chris Harper, and 2 social workers, Caitlin Keener and Morgan Casey.
All right. One of the favorite topics all students want to talk about are the facility dogs. We have Hugo at Woodland, we have Salts at the junior high, and we have Taft at the high school. And my dogs at home know when I've spent time with Taft because they can smell Taft when I come home, and I hear about it, that's for sure.
And then our last Did You Know? We also added Perry Harris as our student and family engagement liaison. That's a long title, but basically he is he mentors students. He helps families with the new transition of moving to Perrysburg, which is, you know, very encompassing of doing that and making them feel welcome. And he is one of our web coordinators, and he is super popular, especially at cafeteria time. They love Mr. Perry to come. So those are just some things, so we appreciate. Here's some wonderful pictures. There's our whole staff. I had to put in Mr. Perry there so you could see his face, but we just have a wonderful staff. So thank you so much for letting us just give you a little snapshot of our counseling duties. So thank you.
Very good, thank you. You pulled out a lot of great accomplishments there. And, you know, one thing that shouldn't be understated is your day job and what a positive impact you have. You know, speaking as I'm not that far out, 2 proud alumni. Yes. Of the district, you know, I know the work that you guys do and the positive impact you have on the students on a daily basis. So thank you for what you guys do every day.
I just have 2 questions. Put you on the spot, but not really. So Wellness Wednesdays at the high school and the Panorama at the elementary, what have you, how do you feel that's helping your job, helping the kids by having those 2 programs established in our school district?
I can speak to the Wellness Wednesday for sure. So one of the things that we do at the high school, we have an advisory board, and one of the parents brought up Wellness Wednesday. And she said, well, some of the kids are not honest on the Wellness Wednesday. And that's okay. but we have a number of students who are. So it's a nice screener so that when a student is having a rough day or they're having a hard time, or we've had some students say that they are considering suicide. They have put that in the Wellness Wednesday, and it has been a lifesaver. So for those students, we are able to intervene right away. And so it may not be something that every student utilizes, but for those who do, it is a lifesaver. For Panorama, that gives us an idea of, I can speak for the high school, it gives us an idea where we need to be focusing our efforts at our Tier 1 work. So if we know that our freshmen, get me talking about freshmen again. If we know our freshmen have some strengths in some of the areas or weaknesses in some of the other areas, we know that we need to construct our lessons based on where our students need to grow. We can do that based on Panorama. So that's how we're using that at the high school. I'll let the two of you speak to what you're doing.
Yeah, and then for the Panorama at the junior high, since we have Jacket Way lessons monthly, and we also have web lessons monthly. The web lessons are for the 7th graders. They are led by our 8th grade web leaders, and then the Jacket Way lessons are led by our teachers that are on the Jacket Way team. And so a lot of that data that we got, where are our needs? Our lessons are focused now more specifically on what of our kids need this year. So that's why we like that data, because we feel like every year could be totally different. You have a whole new group of kids with different needs. So I think it's much better for us. I think our lessons are better. It also helps me as a counselor to gear what small groups do I need to offer. Like, and I didn't even think we tell that things like, anxiety and stress and family changes and those kind of things. So it brings out more specifically what our kids need for those small groups as well as the Tier 1, which is the whole school. It's probably similar for you.
Yeah, we just use that data to look at individual needs and determine our groups. And it's self-reported for 3rd and 4th grade. They answer the questions, but K1 and 2, it's just a small sample, and the teachers answer the questions. Even with 3rd and 4th grade, we are concerned, do you understand what you're answering? So there's dialogue with the teachers, and we collaborated with the social workers. We had a spreadsheet, we identified the needs, and we came up with a plan. How are we, meeting the needs of each of these kids? And then I talk with the teachers, see if they're noticing anything, and Tier 2 and Tier 3 a lot with Panorama.
And I just want to thank you for that, for all the extra things that are taking place in the schools in your positions. Remember when Mrs. Reddick talked 3-4 years back about what she sees coming to her clinic, some of the things that you're seeing, that she's seeing with the cutting and the suicide ideation, suicide, the conversations. We know our world's changed, and we're heavy on the academics, and I'm glad we're heavy on working with the child to help them mentally, because if they're not set mentally, they're not going to do well academically. So thank you for everything you're doing.
I always say you have to lead from heart to head.
True.
Then you get a better learner.
The other thing that we say in our department, you have to have Maslow before Bloom.
Yep.
So if their basic needs are not being met, their mental health isn't there, they aren't going to be learning. And so Panorama, Wellness Wednesdays, the work that we're doing with the groups and the Tier 1 work, that all supports the work that our teachers do, so that we can, help our district meet its vision and mission. So that's what we're here for.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies. Your work is invaluable, as you know.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, next we will jump into the superintendent's report, and Mr. Drewer and I are going to kind of tag team some of this tonight. So first, just wanted to give an update on the Community Facilities Committee recommendations. There is going to be a special meeting on Wednesday, March 1st at 5:30 p.m. This will be in place of the work session that typically takes place that morning. So we encourage people to attend. The meeting will also be recorded and uploaded following that meeting for anyone that would like to view that after the fact. But it's been really impressive to be part of that committee. there's quite a cross-section of individuals across the community, and just to see the evolution of ideas from where the committee started to these recommendations, it's pretty exciting and a lot of thought. We're very lucky to have an engaged, compassionate community that really cares about our schools and what we do. So again, tune in. That's coming up here in a week or 2 weeks. Yeah, a week.
March 1st,
It's
yeah.
very soon. Next, wanted just to take a moment to recognize our assistant football coach, Coach Ward. So he was named the Assistant Coach of the Year. He's also the PE teacher at Woodland. He's incredibly deserving of the honor. Mr. Connor, the high school football coach, just really stated he did a tremendous job of developing the defense. They only had 2 starters returning, and we're just truly blessed to have him on our staff and have him be part of our coaching staff and also our teaching staff. Ironically, Coach Ward was actually my strength coach when I ran track at Bowling Green. So it's kind of come full circle to have him, to get to work with him again. So congratulations to him. Also on the agenda tonight, we do have the next 2 years' calendars up for adoption. And so you'll see in the consent agenda the 23-24 calendar, and then we also have the 24-25 calendar. There were some small tweaks between the first reading and this reading. Some of the changes were we did implement 4 2-hour delays again next year. Part of that is to combat the issue we have with subs and the need for professional development. So it is a way to build that in without having to pull teachers out of the classroom. I know our teaching and learning department and our principals have been very grateful for that. So that was one of the changes from the last reading, as well as a couple just building conference, parent-teacher conference dates. There was some preference working with those leadership teams for those changes, but both of those calendars are attached tonight for review. If they are approved tonight, then there will be a district message that goes out informing families that these calendars are ready, and we will have the next 2 years then planned out for families. And we're gonna hope to get on that cycle again, planning 2 years out in advance for people. This is not great news, but wanted to talk a little bit about, there was a water damage at the high school. So over winter break, there was basically a sprinkler head that burst, and there was water damage, and it did impact the floor. Mr. Mapis, our director of operations, is challenging the insurance company on some of these things, but it is quite a big claim. And so we are working through that right now, and hope to have that somewhat settled in the near future with what we can do moving forward with that.
I have a question, if I could ask now. Is that the main gym floor?
So this is the the stage and the main gym floor. The water got underneath the floor, is my
I was
understanding.
going to say, one's on this and okay.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I was just at a game Friday night. Obviously, it can still be used.
It can be, but it will bubble up underneath, like it's going to have to be replaced.
Okay.
I don't know, Mr. Drew, do you have anything else to add with that? I know you've been talking with Mr. Mapis about this, and
That's where we are.
yep,
Well, but
working
it's-
through it.
Because we talked about this at operations. I mean, the $3 million is the claim. That's not, I mean, that's not the expense to the district.
Our
The
our
insurance.
deductible is 10,000.
Yes, the insurance will respond.
Oh, that was my
and
other question. What's the deductible?
10,000.
1,000, okay.
It'll have future impact on premiums, sure, but that's not, that $3 million number is not what we're gonna write a check for in
Yes.
the next.
So nothing in between the gym and the theater stage got ruined?
It's the stage floor too, is my understanding.
Yeah, stage floor and the gym floor. And the
Yeah.
issue of the gym floor, water got underneath it. And you really no way you can dry it out. It's gonna just
No,
keep,
right.
so.
So staffing needs, we are starting the hiring process early. There is obviously a lot of competition for top quality candidates, so we have been working really hard with our internal process with what those requests might be, looking at enrollment growth, looking at compliance with special education, caseload sizes, and working through those processes. We did hold an interview night. Mr. Christie and his staff set up a screening night where a lot of our building administrators came and helped to screen potential candidates, and that was very successful. Again, I know I just touched on it, but we are seeing an increase in our students with disabilities, and some of those caseload sizes, depending on the type of disability a student has, changes the number of staff that may be needed. So we are keeping a really close eye on that. Dr. Glesser, our Director of Special Education, really spends a lot of time working with principals, analyzing what those needs are and the support that's necessary. And then, of course, specialty content areas, just finding those teachers. I know ASL, for example, things of that nature. We are really trying to get as early start as we can to make sure we can find quality candidates to fill those positions. So several positions have been posted this week, so please pass the word around if you know people that are interested to hop on the website and look at what those positions are. We will be looking for quite a few intervention specialists, so I want to put the plug out there for any special education teachers. We are looking K-12, mild to moderate, and moderate to intense, so please hop on the website and see what is available and spread the word. This is just a little bit of an example of staffing needs and keeping an eye on enrollment. So kindergarten registration day is this Thursday. We already have 342 kindergartners enrolled for next year. So as Mr. Hostler said previously, we either have the most on-the-ball kindergarten families who are registering this early, or we're going to have a very large class. So we will certainly pick up students throughout the rest of the year in the summer. But they are coming. We are growing, and 342 is a higher number for at this point in the year. So just wanted to make sure people are aware of that. The board retreat. So the board did have their annual retreat on February 4th. We had Cheryl Ryan, a consultant from Ohio School Boards Association. She came and led a discussion. Our director of student services and well-being came and walked the board through an activity that was similar to what they did with Stop the Hate, which was all the area athletic directors and student panels that came to talk about just different issues presenting themselves in athletics. And so Mr. Foltz came over lunch and walked the team through that activity. And then the board did hear a presentation and discuss strategic planning and those facility plans. And again, that recommendation from the facilities committee will be coming up next week.
And Ray, I was glad to have you as a partner during that athletic discussion, Mr. Foltz. Thank you.
So Randy, I'll kind of let you jump in here with some of the biennium budget discussions, but there is quite a bit, I guess, going on at the state, and everyone's kind of in limbo waiting to see what's going to happen, but I'll kind of let you jump in on this one.
Yeah, it's a crazy time. So we're in the start of the biennium budget process. The governor has made his proposal. Now the legislature is going to do their thing. But here's a couple highlights or lowlights, depending on how you want to look at it. Number one, a highlight really is our rainy day fund at the state level is extremely strong. The state has money, and they're projected over the next couple of years for the sales tax revenues to continue to increase. Again, indicating a strong economy in Ohio. Where it affects us. So the Fair School Funding Plan looks like, at least the governor's recommendation, that it'll continue the phase in. So we were at 33% last year, or we'll be at 50%, and then 67%. But what the governor's proposal is at this point is that there will be no change in the base costs, but they'll change based on property value and income data, which means the base cost is based on costs from 2018, and the valuations and income data for the district are based on the most current data. So the state is not putting any more skin in the game, essentially, as we get, as really most districts in the state, at least property valuations are going up. And so, which means each locality will have a bigger share. The state share will drop. But that's just a proposal. Some other highlights here. There said we'll phase in, but we're not going to add any additional dollars or change the inputs. So we could run a situation with the phase in, they could run out of money anyway and not fund it. So the key is in the Fair School Funding Plan, the governor's proposal is going to be there, but whether or not it's funded, that's another story. And I'm going to come back to that in my presentation a little bit, because we all have a role to play and encourage our legislators to help support Ohio schools. The other big piece is, and this, the euphemism is backpack bills, moving money from public schools and allow families to use that money into private and non-public entities. And we can see that that's where the growth is. And some money being put forward towards literacy proficiency and some other dollars to help with SROs and that kind of thing. Don't know what that's going to look like yet. At this point, it's just the governor's proposal. The legislature has to do their thing yet.
So a few other just legislative items to touch on is House Bill 1. So this has to do with income tax brackets, and we'll talk a little bit more. There's a little bit more on this in the next slide. But to kind of piggyback off what Randy was saying about House Bill 10 with the Fair School Funding Plan, and then also House Bill 11, the backpack bill, you know, the governor has said that he does want to fund the Fair School Funding Formula, but the legislature then has to also, you know, pass that through. But the legislature has also said that they want the backpack bill. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how this all plays out. There's a lot going on, and like I said, we're kind of in limbo at the moment to see, you know, the chain of events or the domino that falls when some of these things start to get pushed through or happen. House Bill 1, a deeper dive. Randy, do you want to say any more? I know some of this is going to be, I think, in what you're talking about as well.
Yeah, I think that the bottom line here, some of the proposals in this bill, and you can read it up there, but the couple of the big items that really impact us, if you look at the second bullet point, eliminating the 10% property rollback, the state pays us essentially on behalf of the owner. So if you qualify for that 10%, the property owner does not pay it, but the state makes the district whole. They're looking at eliminating that and modifying the homestead program. We won't know what all that means until it happens, but as you'll see in my report, that that tax allocation that comes back from the state is worth about $3.8 million. The Perrysburg school taxpayers get a discount of $3.8 million that is given back to us by the state. And that potentially, some or most of that could go away.
There's a significant impact in the past as to how we've looked at and planned levies and,
Exactly.
and what types to put
and this
on.
will impact the local taxpayers greatly.
Sure.
You know, and us obviously, because we'll have to make
$4
up
million you mentioned, that's our number?
That's our number,
Perrysburg's
3.8 million.
So they got rid of the rollback when you got new levies, right? And now they want to get rid of any rollback.
All of it, essentially.
From
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our district made up, what was the number you said?
Well, our total nut on this is 3.8 million, but we don't know the details enough to know how much that goes away, right? Because we don't know if the state's going to say we're not going to give you this money back, and therefore the county can't give the discount, which I think is what's going to happen. So until we get into those numbers, we don't know for sure on where it's going to end up. But it won't be 3.8 million, but it's going to be a significant chunk of that.
Yeah.
So Randy, it's fair to say that House Bill 1 would basically put a bigger burden on local taxpayers because it would be a reduction to the state budget.
Yes.
And we also, back to the previous slide, there is a pretty significant rainy day fund that is available currently at the state. So moving right along, because I know Randy's going to touch on some additional things during his reports. So school safety grant funding, there has been quite a lot coming through the Attorney General's office and Governor DeWine with different safety grants available. So our district has applied for the safety training grant, which we did find out that we received the other week. It's approximately $5 per student. That money specifically is for training. So things such as visitor engagement training, screener training, vulnerability assessment, SRO training. So that was a positive because we did receive those funds. Mr. Mapis has applied for some of the facility grants that are designated for safety funds. One of the challenges with that is that our district has already done some of the safety features, such as secure vestibules, camera systems. So we have not we're not up high enough on the list of having significant needs in that area, so we haven't qualified for some of that funding yet. But we are on the list, and hopefully, as our name comes up a little bit higher on the list, we will be able to use some of those funds for some of the permanent improvement type projects. And then typically, as other grants become available, we have our executive committee that looks over what those are for. So some are very specifically earmarked for example, HVAC systems or for different types of technology software. And so we do look at those, and we look at what the overall cost for the project would be for our district to determine if the grant is worthwhile. So for example, if an HVAC grant might give you $40,000, that's great, but if the whole project's $500,000, it may not be a worthwhile grant for us to apply for. So we do screen all of those, and of course, we don't want to leave money on the table. So any that do make sense financially, we are applying for, and we work with our safety committee on that. The one grant we're working with our police department on and trying to generate ideas is there are innovation grants that are out there, and those are typically in conjunction with a community partner. So we are talking with them to see if there are some potential innovative things that we might be able to do with our local community partners that we might be able to secure some funds for. Strategic planning. This is also underway. The next meeting is coming up this week. The other dates are on here, and then there will be a presentation to the board. The goal is for May. And so stay tuned. A lot of good work and discussions happening on that committee as well. This is just kind of a fun little positive. So Woodland Elementary has ukulele class. So they are currently working with students on how to basically write their own blues songs. So that's been something fun for the students to do. And then, of course, you heard from some of our wonderful counselors. We did have National School Counseling Week the other week in February, the week of the 6th. And so certainly thank them for all the work that they do. Like Ms. Monheim said, it's kind of like describing the job of a job that's really of a parent. What do you do all day? But they definitely are busy. And then, of course, we all know we have a wonderful music program, so congratulations, because our group did receive District 1 honors, and there was over 28 schools within District 1, so of course, we would expect nothing less, but certainly a shout out to them. So that was quicker than Mr. Hostler, so I'd like to make a note of that publicly. Just joking. So we'll go ahead and Mr. Dreyer, I believe you are going to be up next.
He just
Thank you.
rolled over
Well
in
done.
bed. He pulled the sheets over his head.
Do I get the extra time? No.
I'm not near as eloquent as Mr. Hostler, so that's why it was quicker. But
Okay, okay. Are you on,
I can scroll through. I'll have to scroll through for you.
okay, since you were, we got the report, we need the presentation up there. Everyone knows that Mrs. Price had a coup, kept Tom home so she could do this tonight.
Is this one right here, Mr. Drewer, the report?
No, that's the report, you need the presentation. Go down, should be in that, my first, up on the 7.1.
7.1.
Yeah, click on 7-1.
There we go.
There you go. All right, just keep going, keep going. All right, so I feel like a broken record a little bit on this, because we're just steady as she goes. We're 58% through the year, and we're right where we need to be tracking. On the revenue, I'll just hit on a couple things real quick. We are just a little bit behind on real estate taxes. That's just because it's just timing. We've got 2 tax advances. We're waiting for our final payment. And that should happen here next week, either in February or March, depending on the timing of it. If you notice on line, well, let's talk about income tax first. Right now, year to date, we had an income tax payment at the end of January. We're running at 14% over last year, so that continues to be strong. And then if you look down toward the bottom, property tax allocation and rollback and homestead, that's the portion we're talking about, House Bill 1, that's what will get impacted. And now how much of that 3.9 million it is, we won't know until we get the simulations, if it even gets that far. The last area it's really strong I want to hit, Brooke, you went a little too far, is all other revenue. You see we're 74%, and that's just driven by the economy in terms of interest rates. Our investments are earning a lot more. Where we earn a couple $1,000s a month last year, we're earning $40,000 or $50,000 a month. So I expect that not to last forever, but we'll ride the wave while we can. On expenses, nothing too we're right where we expect to be at this time of year. Capital outlay is a little bit higher than expected, but that's just, we'll talk about here in a few minutes, but that's, a lot of it's driven by the challenge we're having on the maintenance side. And Mr. Mapis and Mr. Bloomer do a good job of using the monies they have out of permanent improvement, but it's robbing Peter to pay Paul to keep things fixed. And obviously, heat has to work, plumbing has to work, and all those kind of things. And the Circle 56 cash days, we're at our low point of the year. It's about where we expect. It's uncomfortable, but we know that's just the way our cash flow works. So Brooke, go ahead. And you can see it here on this chart. The blue line is this year. We're obviously in that dip, and hopefully here we get our check next week, and we'll be, back up. That would pull it down again until summer. So, ahead and move on. So again, this is like every month. It's been the same. Recently, we've been steady. I want to call a couple things on the cost side. Again, it's repairs, not counting like this insurance claim, but just things breaking and trying to keep things together. It's been a challenge. And other things, just like, it's not a huge dollar in the overall budget, but within the supply budget, things like copy paper. We knew prices were going up. We planned for that, but our usage is way up, and we're doing some analysis to see who's using all that paper. We've used as much copy paper this year already as we used all of last year. So that's a concern, and we don't know. Again, it's not a huge dollar amount in the grand scheme of things, but just an indicator that we've got to take a look at, because there's not many things we have control over, right? We have to educate students, and so we have to have staff, but those little things that we control over, we want to take a look at. So, all right. I wish you'd use the PowerPoint so I could have my timing in there. So all-day kindergarten. I want to talk about all-day kindergarten for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is an area where the fair school funding plan really shows and why it's really important to us in Perrysburg. Okay? So when I talk about all-day kindergarten, we already have all-day kindergarten. 80+% of our students attend all day, but it's tuition-based, right? And because of that, kindergarten students are counted as a half a student. If we had tuition free, they'd be counted as one. So last year, our direct investment, so this is just essentially salaries and benefits, was almost $1.2 million for kindergarten, and you can see the revenue there, the shortfall about $246,000. That's not in my mind, that's not a big deal. It's our investment in these kids, as a community. But the question is, and I've talked with Mrs. Price about, is what if we went to all-day kindergarten tuition free? What would the impact be on the district, assuming we have space, okay? So that's a big assumption at this point, because we're tight on space, as we know, and the facilities project's gonna address that. But if space were not an issue, what would it look like? So go ahead, Brooke. So this is an analysis at our current funding formula. So I'm assuming at this point that the legislature does not phase in the fair funding formula, and I'm assuming that, well, that's the main assumption right there. So it's fun at the current level. If you look at 2024, so I'm looking at next year, if we said next year we did all-day kindergarten tuition free, we would generate a little over about almost $330,000 additional revenue from the state. That's due because our kindergarten students would be counted as one instead of a half, and that raises our overall funded student count, so it lowers our valuation per student, so the state share is bigger. So instead of being $1,400 per student, we'd get $1,800 per student. So that change is not just for kindergarten, it's across the board. But you see at that level, we still have a big gap, right? So financially, at this point, it would not make sense. It was made up somewhere else. Go out to 2025, and you see that gap closes a little bit, and by the time you get to 2026, we'd want to be doing all-day kindergarten tuition-free just based on the current funding model. Now, this is where everyone here comes into play, because we need the fair funding model to be implemented and funded for our community, and the next slide shows you why. This is just because of changing kindergarten to tuition-free. If the Fair School Funding Plan is implemented and funded, you can see the numbers. Next year, we're over $500,000, so that closes that gap a lot. But by 2025, it's a no-brainer for the district to go tuition-free all-day kindergarten if we have space. And I think if we were getting those kind of numbers, we're going to find space, right? So this is a win for our families and our students. So I'm kind of imploring you. Tom and I will be in, guarantee you, we'll be in Columbus advocating for the Fair School Funding Plan, but as talking to Haraz and Teresa is going to be important, because there's not many things in the fair funding formula that really help us. This is where it does, where our kindergarten can be counted as a whole student.
So I have a question. So in the past, Randy, we didn't offer it because, like you showed, it wasn't financially beneficial. And obviously right now we don't have the space.
Well, and that's the key, is that,
I just want to make sure I'm understanding the fair funding. So with the new fair funding,
if you go back, Brooke,
it increases as time goes on. So
yeah, and even before the fair funding, yeah, we would have got next to nothing.
Okay.
So that's why the tuition is there.
Gotcha.
Right? It's not because we want to charge tuition, but you saw the cap,
Right,
the
right.
gap. So any questions on that before I move on?
I had one more question. So if the students are counted as half for the financial part, are they in our enrollment though when we say?
Well, when you get our monthly enrollment report,
Yeah.
they are a full body in a seat, so they're counted as one, but the state only counts them as a half. So if you look at our funding report, you'll see, let's say our enrollment's 5,800 students, and you'll see our enrollment report is 5,100. 200 of that is not counting kindergarten.
Okay, so it's kindergarten regardless if you go half a day, you're counted as a half. And
For a
if you
full
go
day,
full day,
if you charge
counted as
tuition,
half.
you're counted as a half.
But if you go half day, you're counted as half as well.
Yeah,
Okay, so but pretty much all kindergartens a half.
half day, yeah, yep,
Half-
exactly.
Half enrollment. Okay, thank you.
All right, so special education. We've talked about, we're working on staffing for next year, and this is an area, from my perspective, on the financial side, I look at what we're doing in special education. Remember, there's two kind of cardinal rules, and Dr. Reffert can correct me if I'm wrong there. Our job in public education is to provide a free and appropriate education for every child, and to do it in the least restrictive environment possible, right? My sister, who would have been special ed these days, she was in a classroom all by a small group, didn't see the light of day hardly. Those kids today are incorporated in our buildings, and rightly so. And I think Dr. Glesser and her staff do a great job of that, but they have a compliance factor that we have to hit. And you can see on the right, all the folks that count into our special education budget. Well, teachers and intervention specialists, that's obvious, but we have speech therapy, occupational therapy. In fact, we're going to have to add an occupational therapist based on numbers. It's all driven by numbers. The other thing this doesn't show you, though, is if they are a Perrysburg resident, if they go to St. Rose and they're special needs, they're still our student. We're still going to pay for them. Our special education administrators are still going to be responsible for their IEPs, but St. Rose is not necessarily going to be held accountable for the education part of it, right? Because they're at a different standard. So if a student open enrolls to Woodmore or to TPS, they're still our students from a cost standpoint. And so just because they're not attending school here doesn't mean we don't have a responsibility for them. And that's important to realize. And it's not a gripe, it's just a fact is we do this thing really well. There's a reason why we have good results. And as Mrs. Price indicated, our average, we're about 11% special needs students, which is lower than the state average, but we have a high percentage of medium to intense needs. So last year, our direct investment, so this is just in salaries, doesn't include any overhead, was $9.3 million. The state, through the monies we get through restricted funds, is about 1.4, a little less than 1.4 million, and then through federal IDEA funds, we got another 1.1 million. That's the challenge, okay? And this is compliance, and it's the right thing to do, right? We know it's the right thing to do, but that's what's faced with us. And the reason I'm sharing it tonight is just as we start talking about staffing for next year, that this challenge is not going to get any less. And I just want you to be aware of it.
Right, and as you say that, Randy, also it's compliance, it's law.
It's law, yeah.
So while you have moderate to intense needs and the cap is at 6 to 8 students, by law, they don't fund the cost to educate those higher needs and rely on the school district to do that.
And there's other things like that. We have a few students that we do not have the capability to educate, that we're in someplace that can take care of those students correctly. They're our students, we'll still take care of them financially and such. So recognize that our special education department, they do a fabulous job for all of us, but it's a challenge budgetary-wise for us. And as we look at staffing for next year, we got lots of demands, but the first thing we got to fill are those compliance ones, the ones that we have to do, and it's going to be in the special education area.
When we think about this in terms of the backpack bill, I mean, parochial private schools don't have that same compliance hurdle hanging over them.
Licensed teachers, because they can just have a bachelor's degree and not an education degree. So there's a lot of difference, but that money goes with them, but they're not held to the same standards as public schools are.
They don't have the caseload requirements, and there's lots of other things.
They don't have to take every child either, and we talk about that all the time, and I'm very open about that, you know, Lucas is on an IEP, and he can't go to Central. They would never take him. Couldn't go to St. John's, couldn't go to St. Francis, couldn't go to anywhere, because they don't have to educate every student like a public school does.
But like you said, we're paying for them, for their needs to get educated, so.
We're doing it,
but we're not funded it. We
Yeah.
don't get reimbursed by the state, and that's what you just showed on that one slide.
Yeah, our requirement as a
Right, but we do pay for
public
it.
educator is different than private
Private
and
schools.
parochial.
And there
I
are
can tell you,
proposals down in Columbus that would make those dollars, make that impact even bigger,
and-
would make those dollars leave the district faster.
There's a meeting in Bowling Green tonight about the backpack bill, and they invited me to it, and I said, well, you may not want me there, because while I may agree with some of it, I don't agree with the, dare I say it, the inequity of it towards
All students.
just what y'all
They get
just
to pick and
said, is
choose.
that
Yes.
it's our tax money that isn't spent fairly across the board. So and this may not be a question for you, Randy, and I always forget about this. So if we have an IEP student that goes out of our district, and you said that we still have to pay for that student, so I won't name a school, but say school X that is taking care of that student, when Andrea has to do her reports, like she just showed us in pupil services, maybe you know the answer, Lori, since that student's being educated over here, but we're still responsible and that's our student, if that student doesn't get the services that he needs and doesn't perform well, does that ding on our report, or does that ding on school X's report?
Depends on what school they go to, because if it's a non-public, they don't have to take an assessment. Like an OAE, or not OAE, thinking of licenses, but they don't have to take a state assessment. That's a different conversation. But I think what you're referring to, Randy, is, for example, if you have someone who has a John Peterson scholarship, while they don't attend Perrysburg, we still have to evaluate them, service their IEP, and provide all those services, but they don't attend Perrysburg schools, but they live in the district.
and there is a component, if we have a student going public school, we still have administrator, we're still attending the IEP meetings. Our psychologist is still evaluating them. And then they are working with that school district to make sure they get the service they get. Now, whatever that cost is comes back to us. All right? So we're on top of it. It's a game somewhat, and I hate to say this, we have some parents who've done that, is, well, I don't like what Dr. Glesser said my child should get, so I'm going to take my student over here, and this district will give them anything they want because they know they're not paying for it. And it goes back to free and appropriate and least restrictive environment. And that's why, so it just, I don't want to open that can of worms, but just recognize we do a good job, and this is a challenge that we're faced with it. And I'll say this, and this is as a parent of a special needs child who was in a district similar to Perrysburg. He graduated from Bowling Green in December. For the last 3 years has supported himself 100%. And as a first or second grader, you never thought he would make it.
Wow.
So it works. We know the system works if you have the right care. Last two items I want.
Can we go back to the previous slide just for a moment?
Yeah.
One of the things we said in our committee meeting was that number $9 million is compliance driven by caseload, but here's the most important reason why that number is there. Our community is investing in it because of our mission statement, that all students will receive the greatest potential by getting educated in the school district. So I think we can keep that in mind. What's driving our decisions too is everybody, all students. But anyway, caseload, of course, and compliance. But
we should be proud of what the district does in this area. And we just have to recognize what the challenge is. The last two things on it real quick. On the board agenda, I just want to give you a little explanation. We have a number of scholarship funds that are housed within our deposits in the district. A lot of them are very small amounts, but there's some that are, I want to say, a little bit larger. And working with the foundation, we think it would be much more advantageous for those dollars to be handled by the foundation, where they can easily accept donations to them, get better earnings, and deliver more funds back out to the scholarship. So the first one, there's going to be several that are going to come across your desk. And the RAFA is a soccer scholarship is the first one. We have a little over $20,000 sitting there, and I'm generating maybe $6 a year in interest on that. Okay, so with legal advice, we've got the documents on the agenda. We're going to take that money, essentially give it to the foundation to manage through the Toledo Community Foundation. So and the donors are good with that. We crossed our I's and dotted our T's with that to, I got that backwards, I know. See if you're paying attention. So I just want to give you that heads up. So we'll have more like this. It's just little dollar amounts that we don't do well with, but we'll be able to do better with it through the foundation. The last thing, just a heads up, we're always looking at improving, and my thing we're going to work on this fall as we go into budgeting in next year is our petty cash policies. We're trying to reduce the amount of petty cash around the district. Not that there is an issue, but in this day where we use a lot more with credit cards and stuff like that, there's no reason to keep as much cash around the buildings and that kind of stuff. So that's just a heads up. So, any other questions?
Okay. Thank you.
Let me sit down.
Okay, so next on the agenda will be an approval of the financial report that Mr. Drury just presented, as well as two fund transfers, a general fund transfer and the scholarship fund transfer, like the RAFA scholarship he had just spoken about. So,
I didn't mention the explanation on the severance. Do you need an explanation on that, or are we comfortable with that?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
So with that, I will take a motion to approve items 7.2 through 7.4 of the financial section.
so moved.
Second.
Mr. Pullman, Mrs. Eubank,
Their turn.
and roll call, please.
Mr. Pullman?
Yes.
Mrs. Eubank?
Yes.
Dr. Reffert?
Yes.
Ms. Larimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bennington?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to check in with the board to see if we've been at it almost an hour and a half. Does anybody need a break, or should we keep going? I'm seeing.
I could do that.
Okay.
I have to go back.
We will take a 5-minute break here before we get into board committees. Okay, thank you for that break. We are back in session. Next item on the agenda is going to be the board committee reports. It's probably going to be a little bit of the Ray and Sue spotlight here. So we'll start with Operations Committee.
Go for it, right?
Ms. Larimer, Operations?
Oh, I'm going to do it? Okay, I didn't have that one pulled up yet. I thought Ray was going to do operations.
He would. He's no longer on Operations. It's you and me.
It's you and me, that's right. Okay.
And I
All
get to
right.
pick who speaks about it. So there you go.
Okay, wait a minute, I'm looking for.
Take your time.
I pulled it up, Sue, on the.
Did you, oh, okay, all right. Trying to remember if there was anything, because I forgot to bring my own personal notes from there. Honestly, I don't think, because James does such a good job of doing the notes on there. I mean, we talked a lot about the water sprinkler issue. Of course, when he said water sprinkler, I'm thinking lawn. It took me a while to get on the same page as that it was inside the building. So basically, because Kelly, you were asking about it, it's basically around $3 million worth of damage, but it's, and James caught the fact that the insurance company was trying to ding this as 3 separate incidences, which would be 3 different deductibles. He says, this was one incident. So when he caught that, that brought it all together. They agreed after some discussion. And so that really reduced a lot of the costs to us. So there'll be one deductible for all of that mess. And it is getting all repaired. The adjusters come out and he's looked at it again. So they're taking really good care of that. So that will be taken care of as much as quickly. But was there, I mean, I don't really remember from looking at the notes that there was anything that I was going to add to that, which is probably why I don't have it pulled up.
I think the other takeaway I had was working on the new USDA nutritional requirements and monitoring the impact that could have. Moving on, Finance Committee. Mr. Pullman stepped in on mine and Mrs. Eubank's behalf, so.
Well, I would say that Mr. Stewart did a nice job of going over the financial report and discussion we had at the meeting, so enough said.
Okay. Curriculum Committee, Mr. Pullman, keep going.
Yeah, a couple things there that I want to pick up on. I know the notes are there in front of you from Mr. Sportsmiller. A lot of activity taking place in that committee, as you well know. So make sure if you haven't looked at the beginning pages, like what work's taking place in the district, what's taking place next month. I mean, just look at the strategic planning, curricular review teams, elementary steering committee, so forth and so on. So a lot of things going on. It's never going on in that department. But I do want to spend a little bit of time just register with me if you're talking in that committee when you're looking at the curricular review. And the key phrase, and it's in a PowerPoint too, so I'm not going to go into everything in detail, but I'm going to give you a small example. But what are we doing? And we found out that we're consistently inconsistent. So, brief summarize that. You all went to different high schools, you all registered for different high schools, and let's say you're all in the Algebra 2 class, and in your Algebra 2 class, I'll turn the microphone on, now I can
In
talk.
college, you're talking about, like, once you graduate and you're.
No, let's say you're in Algebra 2 class, whatever high school you went to, and you were to have this requirement. You learned when you graduated what the quadratic formula was, and you learn how to solve the quadratic formula several ways: complete the square, use the quadratic formula, or factoring. But let's suppose that you were in high school X, and they didn't get quite to that material. That's all right, you moved on to the next level. Or let's suppose you're in the same school system from one classroom to the next, and they didn't get to that material. They spent too much time on one topic over the other because that teacher had, that was the favorite topic of theirs, was something else, and they spent more time. And so what they were talking about in our school system now is the guaranteed and viable curriculum, which is the emphasis on 2 things there. Viable curriculum means that it's going to be consistent from classroom to classroom in topic, and it's going to be vertically and horizontally moved. So vertically simply means that what you've got in 4th grade class will carry over to the 5th grade class, carries over. So I will tell you that in 2020, The fourth graders were out of school at a time when fractions were being taught. Think about that as they become fifth graders and sixth graders and seventh and eighth. What is the expectations of those fourth graders? Well, you had fractions, or those fifth graders, you had fractions last year in fourth grade. Well, there's where the vertical problem comes in, because maybe it wasn't emphasized as much or covered as much, maybe because their parents or their guardians were working with fractions with that fourth grader at home. But the bottom line is, to make short, a long story shorter than what I'm telling you, to me, to be consistent from classroom to classroom, when you graduate from that Algebra 2 class, you've covered the same material that Eric covered in his class, or Kelly covered in his class, and with the idea of it was accomplished with satisfactory information, that you understood it, and you move forward to the next level. I thought that was a pretty good concept, which it's funny because the word collaboration comes up, and we've been doing that for a number of years. We need to continue to do that. So Wednesdays, for example, the 2-hour delays, they have a collaboration amongst the teachers. And that's the best way to improve these concepts. And it takes more than just an hour to go through this. It's going to take a long time for them to go through and do a curricular review. So you have to look in more detail at the PowerPoint and the information. I've got the material here. Mr. Schwartzmiller can be talked at, or Eric. I'm glad to talk to you more about it. But I thought that concept was pretty cool, because I thought about, when I was a teacher, when people close their doors and they teach, exactly what's their accountability to each other, to that student. So again, all students have the same expectations that they're going to get the best education, they're going to get the most knowledge they can from the material, and the highest quality teacher is going to be teaching it. So I want to emphasize that under the teaching and learning. And Brent, I hope I didn't screw that up too much in my summary of the whole thing, but it's more detailed than what I got into.
I had one question, Ray, on the engineering. I forget exactly what if you could pull that up again. Thanks, Brooke. The other one.
Operations or curriculum?
T&L. Yeah, thanks. So the engineering and design, sorry, I couldn't remember. What are those students that are currently in it? How does that phase out?
It's not, the class will still be offered.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just that we're not going to jump through all the hoops it takes to do what needs to be to certify.
Oh, it's still going to be offered, though.
Correct?
Correct. It will have no impact next year. We're currently in year 1 of curricular review for STEM, K-12. Next year is year 2. Now, what that's going to happen the following year will depend a lot on those discussions in K-12 STEM review. We'll definitely offer something. It's just, will it look like it does right now? I don't know. That's part of that discussion.
And these are STEM classes, that engineering and...
They'll be part of that STEM training.
Okay.
Let's go down to Policy Committee. Mrs. Eubank or Mr. Pullman?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this is what we're going to vote on the first reading coming up on the agenda. But we went over a lot of the updated from, what's it called? Neola, thank you, from Neola, and just different minor tweaks on different words. It's pretty much, all here.
I like the athletic policy change.
Yeah. We spent some time on that, discussing that one. Well, of course, Ray, with his history of the athletic. But yeah, no, that was, I think that was still Neola as well.
That was Neola, not us.
Well,
I think
that was the district's policy.
That was the district's. Okay, that was the district's. Okay.
And if you need a copy, if you want a paper copy, you can take this with you. We've got them memorized now, so if you want to take this with you.
Is it any different than what was sent to us?
I think the quote we had given to us was change in law, not changing what we're doing, basically. So, I think, but it's a lot of good stuff here. It's good to have in policy. So if you want to have it, take it home with you. Feel free
And the
to get it.
clarification was appreciated. separating out some old language and
Yeah, she
updating.
started doing that last year or the year before, and oh my gosh, that was so helpful.
Yeah, very good. Again, as Mrs. Eubank, you pointed, this is a first reading. There will be a
Yes,
second
that-
reading in next
Right,
month's.
right. First
And a
reading.
final.
First reading we'll have today.
Final approval in the next meeting.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that takes us to Communications Committee. Ms. Larimer or Mrs. Eubank?
Yep.
Yeah, that one I've got. For some reason, I don't know where the rest of it is. The one thing that I really wanted to talk about there that maybe didn't show up on the notes that you received was the work that Brooke and her safety committee is doing about, if you saw it on there, that it says reunification planning, and you're wondering, well,
What does that
what are
mean?
we doing? Well, that's for when, after an event, and maybe students have to evacuate, what is that next stage? How do we unite students to parents? We're not just gonna, let everybody go crazy. There is a plan being developed. There is a definitely coordinated effort. There is a very specific process that is being worked out and followed. Certain parts of that, of course, is not disclosed, for obvious reasons, and it's basically a need-to-know basis. But is that ready to go? That's coming out to parents fairly soon, isn't it?
Yes, so we've been working with the district safety committee and also have been kind of looping in the parent safety task force. But the ultimate goal is that there will be reunification directions that are in family-friendly language about specifically how the flow of traffic would work, what you would need to pick up your student, your ID, for example, what door you would enter. All that information would be essentially on a web page that would be hidden unless we need it. And so there would both be an on-site plan. So if parents, let's say, heaven forbid, there was a crisis in one building and it was to the extent where we couldn't just send kids in other buildings home on the bus that day, those pages would be enacted and parents would be communicated with how to pick up their child from that home building. And then we'd also have plans developed for the primary evacuation site. So what would that look like? So there's a lot of contingencies and a lot of what ifs, but you essentially have a blueprint ready to go. We work with law enforcement on this, our fire department. So it's really a multidisciplinary plan. And then each building will have reunification kits with posters, signage, safety vests, everything that would be needed to make sure that's as smooth as possible in the event we ever had to have parents come pick up their students after a crisis. So that's in the works.
Okay, any other comments on, say, foundation or?
Yeah, there were some really cool things going on in the foundation. One that we all know that the foundation is going out and giving grants and helping classrooms and helping teachers and helping students. But especially in light of Daniel Kavanaugh tonight, wait a minute, I'll find it. Okay, so an 8th grader, Dylan Murr, qualified for the, get this, International History Olympiad. He won the right to go to that. It's being held in Rome this time. And so the foundation is donating through the Edward H. Simmons Scholarship $3,000 so that he can fly and have a hotel room and a chaperone in order to attend this. This is not his first rodeo. This is the second time he has won this competition. So that's pretty darn cool. And so I thought that was, obviously there were a lot of other things that we did, but I just thought that was very cool that you would want to know about.
That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, if that's it for board committee reports, we'll move into our consent agenda. Consent agenda is covering items 10 through 13. Prior to any discussion, I will take a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Reffert, Ms. Larimer? Anything, any questions, anything to pull out, or not pull out, I'm sorry, but any questions or anything to discuss?
I had one question, because I
Yes.
thought it was supposed to be in Mr. Hauser's presentation. The calendar, was anything, I looked at it, but was anything changed?
Yes, the 2-hour delays were added from last reading.
Okay.
And then just so a couple of the back-to-school open house and conference dates were tweaked a little bit on the recommendations from their building leadership team, but those were the only significant changes from the first reading.
Okay, okay. I liked the new layout and the new colors. It wasn't so
No, I did too.
Thank you to Mr.
overwhelming.
Schwartzmiller for that.
Yeah, yeah, it's more pleasing on the eye.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I like that. That's it.
Okay. Mr. Drewer, roll call, please.
Dr. Reffert,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Mrs. Eubank,
Yes.
Mr. Pullman.
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes. Next item, item 14, any board discussion? Any comments from the board?
I wanted to, I know Sue and I were, both attended Friday's Diverse Learners Day. And it's my first opportunity to go, because we also had the day off. And so I used my day off to attend the professional development, and it was phenomenal. It was very well run. It was a lot like a professional development when you go to a conference, a lot like Capitol Conference, but on a different level where you could pick and choose what you wanted to do. And the ones I went to were very informative, very helpful. I went to one that was, it was a student panel, and I think Sue, you went to it too?
No,
Did you
I
get to it?
didn't. No, I
Okay.
didn't go to that one.
That was very moving, having the student voice represented, with what they say, Mr. Perry. But, he moderated it with the counselor, Mrs. Potts. And it was phenomenal. I mean, I've gone to many conferences in the course of 28 years, and that is spot on. It was the closing.
I wanted to go to that last year, and
Yeah.
it got canceled at the last second, so.
It was just
a
so
year-
much
I
to
was a year
choose
too
from,
early.
and it was all about students and all about doing what's best for students, and even the closing session with Katie.
gosh, Peters.
Be a marigold. Yeah, it
Yes,
was just it was a
marigold.
way perfect to end it. It was fantastic. It was the day went quick, but it was very. I wish we could bottle it and share it. It
Yeah.
was great.
I only was able to go to one session plus the keynote, and I went to one that was really off the wall to me. I went to what is it like in the day of a TESOL? I was like, okay, here's another acronym to learn, and I finally figured out what it was. Teacher of English for Speakers of Other Languages. In the olden days, it used to be called ESL teacher, but now it's a TESOL teacher. And I found out last night that there's even a different one, a TOEFL teacher, which is foreign languages. This was a phenomenal presentation that I suggested to her, if she hurries up, she should present this at the OSBA convention because it was so good. But there was a statistic in there that I thought was pertinent for us. In the year 2018-19, we had 37 non-English speaking students in the district. We currently have 87. That's huge. The burden that puts on a district. And the way that she tried to explain that was that we walked in, and I didn't know who the adults at the front of the room were. And she sat over there. I didn't know she was the presenter. There was a Chinese lady that was speaking to us in Chinese, and she had all these things laid out front. And she was being rather annoyed, and we finally figured out that we were supposed to take some of these things. There was construction paper and popsicle sticks and pipe cleaners and pencils and scissors, and I didn't know what to take, so I just kind of watched that lady over there, who happened to be Amy, and I saw what she took, so I'm taking what she took, and this lady is just barking orders at us in Chinese. And I thought, I don't know what to do. And that was exactly what she wanted us to do. There were probably about 25 of us in the session, and we created a paper lantern at the end, which my grandgirls just loved playing with later on. But it was interesting how they did it because we didn't suffer the entire time. The next part of putting the lantern together, they used pictures on a video presentation. And the level of anxiety in the room dropped dramatically. It was palpable. There are more than 24 different languages spoken in our district that come. And some of them, when she showed them up on her screen, I've never even heard of that. And something called Tagalog. It's Filipino language, I think, yes. There were so many languages on there that I didn't even know what they were. But to see what we have 2 TESOL teachers in the district that help these students, just 2. So when one of the counselors was talking about a class of 1 to 25 and 1 to 45, the difference that you can make, and you're not even speaking their language, it was impactful, and that's exactly what that PD day is all about.
Imagine being that student and that family and communicating with that family.
Yeah, and that was something too, because she brought that out as well, that maybe the student can speak English, but the parents can't. So then how do you communicate with the parents? And you can't always use the student to translate. So, yeah, ooh, boy.
Another perspective.
Yep. It really was. It was very nicely done.
That's great. Well, thanks for sharing that, and kudos to all the work that goes behind putting that day on and coordinating all of that. Any other board discussion topics? Okay, we will move on to item 15, our second opportunity for public participation. This is topics other than agenda items. Again, we will allow 15 minutes in total, although it looks like we only have 1 speaker. So that speaker will have 3 minutes. We'll recognize Chris Gorange to the podium. Please provide for the record your address and affiliation with the schools.
As you said, my name is Chris Gorange. I'm a parent in the district, Carinade Drive. This is a much smaller crowd than what I'm used to seeing here. These past few years have kind of been a little crazy, but so I was here a year ago, actually, the February meeting, wanting to simply thank the teachers, administrators, and the board for their work during a demanding time. I also wanted to highlight how great our district is. I was immediately followed by someone who didn't agree. They recounted stories of families they met as a realtor saying that the Perrysburg School District just isn't that great. Well, enrollment continues to grow in our schools because families continue to choose Perrysburg. The incoming 5th grade class, which my oldest daughter will be a part of, will be the largest that HPI has seen yet. My kid's elementary school went to 5 classes per grade this year when it was already busting at the seams. They actually have a permanent 4th grade class now within the portable. Why do I mention this? Well, in Perrysburg schools, we work to incorporate programs such as DEI and SEL. I don't often see support of these programs here in these meetings outside of passionate teachers or our board members. When it's brought up by others, it's usually in opposition. Why? What is wrong with being aware of our diversity and striving to make things not just equal, but equitable? What is wrong with making sure that all are included? We aren't sharing pie. We are trying to make sure that all students get the education that they need instead of one size fits all. This makes Perrysburg School District successful and leads to great students who become great individuals. Some among us choose to make these programs into trigger words and manipulate what they really are. I recently came across an example of this, a video of a community member presenting their views at a convention supposedly meant for school board members. While I was inclined to turn it off, I chose to watch and learn about their view. They recalled their concern about their grandchild's emotional development during our mask mandate. However, they weren't really an advocate for SEL, which seems counterintuitive. They thought parents know best when it comes to education, not professionals, such as teachers. They said that this board wasn't transparent in dividing parents and teachers and that you want friction. They stated that schools should be academics only. They even invoked George Orwell, like many do while trying to legitimize conspiracy. I know I'm only one person, but I'll say the following. I was also concerned for my children and their well-being. However, masking kept my children in school where they could be educated and socialize. As a parent, I do know what's best for my kids, and that's to bring professionals in when they know more than I do, including their health and education. I find this board to be, at minimum, as transparent as it needs to be to do its job effectively. Sometimes there's confidential information. I found that each board member would take the time to respond to my concerns as a parent and engage in conversation. I've also found that teachers communicate often with parents and are incredibly accessible without friction.
Mr. Gorge, that is 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that is our public participation. So the next item on the agenda, well, before we adjourn, so we'll see everybody on Thursday for the strategy meeting. And remember, rather than our work session, we have a facilities committee meeting in the evening on March 1st. Special meeting. So
Wednesday, yeah.
with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Dr.
Second.
Rufford, Mrs. Eubank, and roll call, please.
Dr. Reffert,
Yes.
Mrs. Eubank,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Mr. Pullman, Mr. Bennington.
Yes, we are adjourned. Good night. Thank you.